Hi there, we're going to talk about sniping in Arma 3 and how we make it as realistic as possible. To do that we require 3 add-ons and I'll go through these. The first is advanced ballistics. Primarily this adds wind to our game along with several other important features. The second is called Kestrel 4500, which is a anemometer or wind meter as some people call it. And the fourth is AtragMX, which is a ballistics calculator, and I'm going to talk you through using the Kestrel 4500 and the AtragMX. And right, so let's get straight to it. Right, so I'll change to my binoculars and first person, and as we can see I have several targets set up at various distances. First is at 600 meters, the second is at 800 meters, and we've got a third at 1100 meters, and I've also added a fourth. Now I'm going to run you through the 2 add-ons within the game that we use to calculate our shots. Right, so here we have a target at 600 meters, fairly short range for a sniper. So I'll just bring up the 2 items that we're going to use. We're going to use the Kestrel wind meter, and we're also going to use the AtragMX, and this is our ballistics calculator. Before we put anything, before we dial in our gun, an important point to make is that when we change to our gun, it will be zeroed in at a set amount, and in the top right you can see that's 500 meters. This is important. We're not going to change this as you normally would with the page up and page down. We are going to do everything in the ballistics calculator to work out our mil-dot adjustments. Okay, so this is our ballistics calculator, the AtragMX, and I'm going to run you through several important details that we need to look at. The first, at the top left, this refers to our caliber size, and currently I'm using the M320, which is the .408. So currently I need to adjust that down to this here, which is the .408 round, and I'll just run you through what each field means. Okay, so the input fields at the top right, these are the units of measure, and D stands for joule, so the ranges are in yards and everything else will remain metric. E stands for English only, so everything will remain imperial, and the M stands for everything metric, which I prefer to use. You can use these as you wish. Okay, so moving across to gun, these are details about the round and the gun type and so forth. So the BH stands for bore height. This is either in centimeters if using metric units, or inches if we're using imperial units. BW stands for bullet weight in grain. C1 stands for ballistic coefficient as air friction, and MV stands for muzzle velocity. ZR is our zero range in metric units or yards if we're using imperial units. Now it's very important to note that this is the same as what the rifle is calibrated to in the game, so we keep that as is. You could adjust it if you wished, but when we're back in the game I don't recommend using the page up or page down to zero your rifle. Is another method. Okay, So we're going to move across now to the atmosphere column. TMP is temperature. That can either be in Celsius or Fahrenheit if we're using imperial units. BP stands for barometric pressure, and RH stands for relative humidity. Okay, moving on again. Target. Okay, so WS is wind speed, either in meters per second or miles per hour if we're using imperial. WD is wind direction. Okay, so this is one to explain here. Imagine the face of a clock. If our wind was coming from left to right, so going across us, we would change this to read 9. If the wind was going from right to left, we would change this to 3. If the wind was behind us, we would change it to 6. So currently 12 means we've got a headwind. The way we can check that is by shifting K, and we can currently see that our wind is coming from around 8 o'clock. So I'm going to input 8 o'clock in here, and IA. Now this is inclination of angle in degrees. Again, this is another thing we can find out by using shifting control K, and you can see that that brings up this protractor, and currently looking at the target we're at about -8, I would say. So I'm going to adjust that to read 8 or -8. We can have minus or positive figures, so if we're shooting down it'll be a minus figure, if we're shooting above us it'll be a positive figure. One thing you probably noticed there is when I escaped out of the calculator, it didn't save everything. One thing you seem to have to do is to press calc before we return to, before we minimize it essentially. Right, so you see it forgot my 8 o'clock wind direction. Okay, so TS is target speed. We'll get onto this later. And TR is our target range. Okay, so we know this is 600 meters. Okay, however, what we haven't done yet is input any wind speed figures or temperature or pressure settings and humidity. So I'm just going to escape out of that, and we're going to look at the Kestrel in more detail. So to get those findings, we just need to use the cursors on the Kestrel. Shift control minimises the Kestrel, and we'll bring up our calculator again. And I'm going to change these readings to reflect what I'm getting from the Kestrel, so just bear with me. And we're inputting our pressure. Don't put any decimal places here, or you can in fact. Just make sure you can put decimal places in, it's not a problem. And our humidity is 51. Okay, so currently we've got the right caliber set up, we've got our atmosphere conditions set up, and we've got our target details set up, but we also need to put in our wind speed before we should make the shot rather. Another thing to notice is we have A, B, C and D here. These are basically other memory banks we can use for either other guns or other targets, but it does jump back to a higher caliber gun there, so just bear that in mind. We can adjust that and then put in another target's details here, or we can just remain with this one, which is what I tend to do personally. Okay, so we need to put in our wind speed. Now the Kestrel will be affected by standing behind rocks and buildings and so forth, and the wind can be quite variable, so let's just have a look at our wind reading. So currently I'm prone, so let's stand up and let's just bring our wind up, shift K, sorry, and I like to stand into the wind just to get a reading. Right, so our wind speed is 3.4 meters a second. This might make things tricky, but I like the challenge, so let's just 3.5. Okay. I like to take the maximum setting and input that, so 3.5. It's still coming from 8 o'clock, that's fine. Okay, so when we calc that, we get a wind reading, so we can adjust our scope, and obviously we have the elevation of the scope now. You would expect to obviously see that figure increase as the target range is further than the zeroed range of our rifle. So let's go ahead and let's make a shot, and I'll show you how to adjust the rifle. So we'll go prone again, and this is post DLC, so post marksman DLC rather, so we can use the bipods, but I'm also using BTS, and I'll just show you how to adjust the mil dots on our gun. So if we press shift, we can jump up and jump down in whole units for the elevation, down to -4 and up to +30. So obviously the higher the figure there, the further our target is away from us. Okay, so let's look at those readings again. We've got plus 0.67, and we can do in tenths. So I'm going to round that up to 0.7, and our wind was -0.4. So let's adjust that. Okay, and we're ready to make a shot now. So there we go. Let's have a look at the target there. Pretty much spot on at 600 meters. You could increase the mil dot for the wind. I suspect the crosswind is slightly more going through the valley if you wanted. So let's take another shot and see what effect increasing it by 1/10 does. Okay. So it was somewhere in the middle that we needed to be there. Okay. So that's at 600 meters, quite a close target. Our next shot is at 800 meters. I'll just show you that with the binoculars, just so you know I'm telling you the truth. That's 800 meters exactly. Let's change back to our rifle, and it's a shallower shot, so let's just consider our inclination of angle again. I'm going to take it back down to -5. Okay, so, and obviously we also need to adjust our target range. Okay, so now we need to increase the elevation on our scope to 2.36 and increase the wind slightly. I'd already changed it to 0.5 from our last shot. We kind of know from experience that it may just be a bit more between the 2 points, so I'm going to increase it to 0.6. Let's increase the elevation to 2.4. So shift for whole numbers and just the arrow key to get the decimal places, and let's make this shot. Let's see how we go. And I'm also going to turn on just the bullet path tracing, just to give you an idea of what's happening. Okay. Okay. So that was at 800 meters, and let's check the impact. Okay, so as I suspected, the wind seems slightly stronger. I mean, we're over the brow of a hill, so it may have reduced our wind reading. So I'm going to just increase it by 0.2 mils to 0.8. Let's try another shot. Okay, so pretty close. As you can see, the elevation is pretty much spot on. Right, so moving on, we've got another target here. I'll use the binoculars, and we're going to have a go at this shot here. So that's 1,101 meters. So let's input that into our calculator. And calc that. So we've now got an elevation of 5.25 and a wind reading of 0.8 essentially. So as the reading was 0.8 for the wind, I can increase it to 1 based on our previous shots, and we'll increase the elevation to 5.23. I'll round it up again, and let's see how we do on this shot. Right, okay. So the wind seemed to have a greater effect there. So let's increase it further still. Right, so let's check that target. Okay, so not bad from 2 shots at 1100 meters. It's, I can see the elevation is pretty much spot on again. So you could either hold slightly to the left for that wind. Let's check the target. Oh, so just cleared targets. Right, let's add another target there again. Go back to the binoculars so I know I'm putting it at the right distance. Right. Let's put it there. Right, okay, let's have another go. Let's try not to clear them. Right, okay. And let's put some new clip in. Okay, so we were going to try and hold just slightly to the left to take into account that wind. That looked pretty good. Okay. Not bad at all. Hold further still. There we go. Okay, so let's move on to our next target, which was also removed. So let's add another one there. Right, so this is at 2,100 meters. Okay, let's get our rifle back. Let's change our target range. Now, whilst we're doing this, it's always a good idea to check the wind and wind direction, as it does seem to change. Right, so you can see our elevation has jumped right up here to 19.4. So let's go ahead and increase the scope. .4, and our wind adjustment was minus 1.83. So let's increase that to 2.2, just because I think the wind has been channeled down the valley and is slightly increased. Right, so let's have a go at this one. So bear in mind this is 2,100 meters, and that's quite a shot. Okay, yeah, the wind seems to be having a really big effect here, so I'm going to increase it further still to 2.9. Let's have a go. Okay, so it looks like we need further still even, 3.5, and it looks slightly high, so bring it down to 19. Obviously what we forgot to do was change our inclination of angle, so let's see if that makes a big difference. So it's actually telling us that we need to increase it further, but I'm not going to do that, as our shots already look slightly high. So let's have another go. Slightly low. Obviously, small differences that we make on our scope here over greater distances have much more of a pronounced effect. It's not bad. Right, so let's check that target. So let's try and make another shot. Okay. Oops. So there we go, not bad at all. I'm going to show you a really nice feature of advanced ballistics that I always wanted in a sniper kind of scenario. Right, so I'm just going to turn off the bullet trace and let's readjust our settings on the Kestrel, as I've forgotten them from last time. You could have used one of the memory banks to store those details if you wished. So right, 5.28. Oops. Okay, and our wind adjustment was 0.8. I'll leave that at 0.1. Okay, so what we're looking here is the kind of the vortices from the actual bullet itself. If you look really closely, you should be able to see it when I make the shot. So let's have a go. Right. Not the best there is I didn't have my bipod or BTS weapon resting deployed, so hopefully there's less recoil, and I'll try and show you again. Okay, so you can actually see the bullet path, which to me is pretty cool. The wind seems to be getting a bit stronger, so I'm just going to hold. So hopefully you could see it there. I don't know if you can make that out, but it's pretty cool. Okay, there's one final thing I want to show you in this tutorial, and that's a moving target, which I mentioned earlier. So let's add a moving target first. And I think it's this setup here with the bullet path and so forth. I think this comes with advanced ballistics, which is quite good. Yeah, you can add all kinds of targets and things. So we're going to add a steel pop-up mover, and let's get our range first. Right, so I measure that at 831 meters. Let's input that. Okay. Oops. Right. What we're looking for now is a lead. Now the lead is in mil dots, and it will tell us how far to hold we're making our shot. So let's have a look at that target. Seems to be moving reasonably quickly, and as we're in metric, it'll be in meters, so I estimate that's 2 meters a second. And now we've got a lead of 2.6. So let's get our rifle back up, and from our crosshairs we need to make the shot when the target is across 2.6 mil dots, so around about there. Okay, when it's on its return, obviously. Have I adjusted my rifle? 2.67. No, I haven't. So it's round up to 2.7 and wind of 0.6. I'll leave it at 0.7, just because shots seem to be going slightly further right. Yeah. So let's have a go. There we go. So at 2.6, it gave us the right reading of lead for our moving target. So obviously the ballistics calculator is really good if you enjoy sniping. Let's try another shot there. Make sure it wasn't a fluke. It was a fluke. So it gets you pretty close, really. And obviously that's a moving target at over 800 meters, and obviously it really does add a new degree of difficulty into the game, and makes it much more of a challenge, really. So hopefully that gives you an insight into sniping with the advanced ballistics, Kestrel and the AtragMX. Okay, thanks.